want to welcome you to our TPSU virtual town hall meeting of April 24th. And before we get started with the actual content, I'd like to turn the meeting over briefly to the founder of Trial, TPMI, TPSU, and 401k TV, one of the brilliant men in our industry and a real leader, Fred Barnstein. So I'll turn it over to you to begin, Fred.
Thank you, Tom. I'm trying to find a brilliant man here, so it'll have to be me. So I wanted to just briefly welcome everyone. We're doing these weekly town halls at 1 o'clock Eastern time. And, you know, while people are stuck in their homes and trying to be as productive as possible, we wanted to have a way that we can reach out and add value to you and have an interactive town hall on subjects that are relevant to what everybody is going through. We've changed our focus a little bit to focus around what's the role of the retirement committee managing through the crisis and the different issues that they may be dealing with, and not just defensively, but even proactively on that. So we do have an hour of CE, and I think if you do wait at the end, we'll give you that code for coming on. And then we also are making available to plan sponsors access to the 3 online courses, TPSU Retirement Committee Education courses, each of which carries an hour of continuing ed. And also, if you complete the courses, you get a certificate of completion for your fiduciary file. So we're trying to help you through the CE when you're maybe not going to be able to go to conferences as often as you have in the past. So Tom Foster, who is the managing director of our TROW Speakers Bureau, will be moderating the panel, and we have 3 great panelists: an HR professional, the head of distribution at Mass Mutual, and we also have an advisor, because today's topic is the role of the advisor, the plan advisor for plan sponsors, how you should be using them, what they can help that retirement committee, not just the committee, but their participants and the employees. And we want to highlight some of the best practices on how you can use your advisor and what people are doing. There is going to be interactive features, questions after each of our panelists, as well as poll questions for each of them. So with that, Tom, I'm going to turn this over to you, and I'm going to be searching for that brilliant man that you mentioned in your introduction. I'll see if I can find him. Tom, are you there?
There we go. First of all, thank you, Fred. And as I said, all you need to do is look in the mirror and you'll find that brilliant man. I'm going to introduce the panel for today's discussion. First of all, we have Stephanie Brazil. She's a team member, business partner with TNG Retail Services from Grosse Valley, California. We next have Bob Carroll. As Fred said, he's the head of workplace distribution at Mass Mutual in Boston, Massachusetts. And then finally, we have David Griffin. And David is the director of institutional retirement plans in the Atlanta Retirement Partners and is based in Atlanta, Georgia. Now, before we get started in asking questions of our panel, let me just give you a little review of what we've done over the last 4 town halls. We started our discussion back on March 20th with 3 advisors, and this was prior to the CARES Act actually having been passed. We talked to them about how they're communicating in this time of crisis and what techniques they're using to keep both you, the plan sponsor, and your participants up to date and working with you side by side. The next week, we actually had sort of a memorable call, because March 27th was the time of our next call, and that was actually the day that the CARES Act passed. As a matter of fact, it passed while we were doing our program. And during that program, we had a lobbyist and a lawyer from the law firm of Davis and Harmon, and they went through, first of all, what the process was in bringing this legislation to fruition, and then we talked about some of the provisions of the CARES Act. We also had a representative for the U.S. Chamber of Commerce who talked about the issues that they were facing as a chamber. And then finally, we had a Peg Knox, who is the chief operating officer of the SIA, a trade organization that represents 185 member firms around the country. The following week, we had an HR generalist who talked about some of the issues that she was facing, especially in the line of furloughs and layoffs. We had a advisor from the Twin Cities of Minnesota, and he talked about some of the strategies that he was using with his clients. And then we talked to John Doyle, who talked about the use of target date funds and how they're changing as we go through this crisis period. Our last call, which was the first call that we actually introduced the SHRM credit program, we had, again, a generalist in the HR area, and she talked about how to prioritize the challenges that U.S. plan sponsors are facing in today's environment. We then had a record keeper who talked about the issue of having prepared all of his people and all of his participants and plan sponsors for the Secure Act, and right in the middle of it, what happens, the CARES Act passes, and they were talking about how you transition from one program to another, the CARES Act, having prepared them for the Secure Act. And then finally, we talked to an advisor who talked about what you do with your participants when in a matter of just 90 days, you experience both a bull and a bear market. And he talked about how you would transition and some of the issues that he faced and how he faced those challenges for plan sponsors. So we've got a great panel today, and we're going to start with Stephanie. Now, Stephanie, we're all into our second month of this disruption. And as a result of workplace disruption, quarantining, and sheltering in place. As a human resources professional, your experience includes employee relations, payroll, creating and conducting training programs, performance management, benefits, HR policy development, and legal compliance. Your role has you frequently interacting with benefit specialists and the retirement plan committee. So for our call today, Stephanie, employers and plan sponsors are fielding complex questions, as you probably would be aware, from plan participants concerning distributions from their retirement plan. How have you incorporated the retirement plan advisor to help with responding to those questions and to help calm the fears of all your participants?
That's a great question, and I don't know that I've necessarily calmed the fears of all of our participants, but as this situation is evolving and dynamic, we're trying to utilize our plan sponsors for leveraging information that's specific to our organization, that's specific to our team members. We have complexities with such a large number of team members that we have. So I think, ensuring to leverage those partnerships, the understanding of your organization, and then crafting education and communication and doing it proactively has helped calm people to a certain level. I still think that the fears exist.
Sure. And what specific procedures have you put into place to actually facilitate that, Stephanie?
Ever evolving. So I have my benefits department who is working on actively reaching out to our plan sponsors. We have, team meetings 3 times a week to stay abreast of all the information and change in the legislature and on all aspects of COVID situations such as this. And then as we're doing that, we have communication strategies that are going out multiple times a week on a variety of topics related to benefits, including this.
Now, in terms of how you react with them, are you interacting with people at different levels, salary persons, as opposed to different levels of your company? Are you having different interactions with those various groups?
So we have 11,000 team members, but the interaction is different. The way that our 401k plan is structured is structured the same way across the board, but because of our variable part-time team members versus our salary team members, obviously there's a little bit of differentiation there. Also, we're in an untraditional situation that most companies are. We have more work than we know what to do with. Since we're in the grocery retailers and we're assisting those clients with crisis response to continue to serve the community, have access to food and such items, there hasn't been as much of an impact on us in regards to people really wanting to have the time to focus on this and/or really wanting to cash out their 401k or that sort of thing, because a majority of our team members are still working.
So in other words, the issue of whether they're going to change investments, whether they're going to stop making deferrals, that issue hasn't come up because right now they're dealing with a plethora of other issues that are more important in their mind right now. But when we come out of this crisis, and by the way, thank you so much for all of your employees serving the communities that they're in, because they're very essential to our overall well-being. But when we do start to come out of this crisis and we find an adequate vaccine and things level off, do you think there will be any sort of overkill, not overkill, but sort of a reaction by your employees at that time? Gee, now I got to start thinking about my 401k. Do you think that would come to fruition later on after this?
I think that may come to fruition for our corporate team members, but I think that's also, I think there's factors that are play there. I think there's generational factors. I think there's just educational factors in regards to investments and the importance of it in retirement. I'm actively looking at a holistic education on financial competency for our team members. A lot of our part-time team members or our variable hour team members are entry level. So when you have someone who's 18 and 19, thinking about what you need when you're 70 is not really in your purview at that point in time. So when they come out of this, I don't think that they're going to think about it because we've structured our program in kind of a set it and forget it way with some other tools and partnerships to have them passively engage in retirement almost without them not even thinking about it. Now, I do think for the corporate team members, there's the potential for that, but we are so engaged with our corporate team members right now, and because they are working and they're abreast and have all this information that's going on, I would anticipate that I would see some of that fallout right now, and I'm not seeing it. So I don't know that I'll necessarily see that fallout when this is all done. I think there'll be a great opportunity for additional education on retirement and why it's important, and utilize this as an example of why you need to kind of ride the wave of it. But yeah, I don't know that I'll necessarily have fallout.
And that brings up a good point. You said you train them holistically. So in other words, are you training them? And you said it's very important that you educate them appropriately. Are you educating them in all aspects of financial planning or just certain parts of it? And how are you actually incorporating those things with those two different groups that you're talking about?
So that's a great question. And we have a real multifaceted communication approach. As you can imagine, because we don't really have brick and mortar and we're in our client sites, different grocers and retailers, we have to get very creative. And part of that creativity is leveraging our HRIS system, which allows us to do community broadcasts through emails. We do a lot of webinars of things. We have our homepage of our employee self-service structured in such a way that it invites people to start exploring those sorts of things. Additionally, we send text messages, and the communication is a bit different for our entry-level variable hour team members. That holistic approach looks more of like, we have a lot of people that just don't even have bank accounts or direct deposits or that sort of thing, or understand how to read a paycheck. So I have little video clips that explain what a deduction is, what is your gross pay versus your net pay. That's very important stuff to know. Then we start to the education of, hey, we have this partnership with a bank that you can go ahead and get a free checking account, and you can get it instantly and get direct deposit. And we have a cool partnership with them that our team members can get their direct deposit up to 3 days early. They also have an automatic savings that ties into our partnership with EvoShare, which allows people to go purchase everyday items and get a cash back that goes into their 401k. Then we start talking to people about the 401k and saying, okay, you have those in place and you don't even have to think about those. You just go shopping like you normally would. But now let's start looking at, what are you spending in taxes right now? Let's figure out that percentage that will take you to where your net pay is the same, but instead of that money going to taxes, because you're going to pay it anyways, let's pay ourselves in our retirement. So we do those educations ongoing. Now, when we start talking to our corporate folks, we start talking a little bit more about life insurance and that sort of thing. We have some introductory of that on the financial planning side, but more accident coverage for that variable hour population. So by and large, you don't know what people don't know. So I think It's better to take it back to Adam and Eve per se, and someone can always learn something from it. You could have a corporate exec who doesn't know how to read his paycheck appropriately. So you never want to assume what the knowledge level is.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Stephanie, are you currently offering any type of ancillary benefits where employees, if they are in need of funds, they can go to those first, such as an emergency fund or HSAs or things of that nature? Are you offering any of those type of alternatives to the retirement plan currently?
So we do have FSAs and HSAs that are available to our team members. Additionally, even prior to this, we were looking at crafting emergency plans of vacation donation, sick time donation. We have different partnerships with our retailers that are doing financial incentives because our team members are working. So there's a variety of things that we have done, as this is unprecedented times. So we could never have been prepared. I spend a lot of time with my attorney and a lot of time with crafting policies and procedures and programs, and then having to change them the next day because the guidance has changed. So it's been a little clunky, but it hasn't felt as clunky to my team members, which I think is ultimately the most important thing.
That's great. And finally, today we're talking about how the retirement plan committee actually interacts with their advisor, record keepers, and whatnot. What strategies and creative activities have you observed among retirement plan committee members as they work to fulfill their fiduciary responsibilities to the plan and their participants? Stephanie, are you there?
No, I'm here. I'm trying to think, how to answer that.
Well, the best you can.
I'm not quite sure, that still just trying to have those open lines of communication and make sure that you understand everyone's role in it. And then with doing that, trying to disseminate that information out as much as possible and be dynamic and adjust accordingly. Even in some of this, I've learned very quickly that I just don't know what I don't know.
Sure.
And really having to leverage all the resources and digest that and adjust accordingly.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Stephanie. And I think right now we're going to go to a poll question. And let's put that poll question up on the screen, DJ. Okay, as you see, who are you relying on primarily to help your retirement committee manage through the COVID-19 crisis? Plan advisor, record keeper, HR consultant, or other? And as you react to this poll, another thing I want to mention is if you want to ask a question during this program, make sure you type it in. We won't be taking questions orally over the phone, but we will answer questions that you type into your computer or whatever device you're using to listen to this program. So Stephanie, or Steph, while we're doing this, any questions from the audience currently?
We do, Tom. And the first one is a question regarding retirement committees. So how are retirement committees reacting to the fact that for them as an employer, they may have a workforce that is no longer in a position to retire as a result of what's taken place in the equity markets?
Okay. Stephanie, would you like to take a shot at that?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I think that having to look at ourselves as organizations and the employee relation, the compassion side of things of, one, as an employer, are you in a position to provide some supplement? What does that look like? Are you challenging your retirement team and seeing, is there something that we can do? Can we get creative? How can we do this? Look at some individual counseling that we can provide our team members to where maybe they can retire and they're just not aware of it. And maybe those first 2 years of retirement are not going to look like year 5, 6, and 7. But if we can provide people the tools and do the analysis and look as an organization, if that makes sense, can we assist this? If not, let's at least challenge our business partners to do the analysis of our team members and get creative on how we can get them to that end goal, even if it looks a little different than what they had anticipated.
Great. And Bob and David, do you have any comments on that particular question? Bob?
Yeah, thanks, Tom. I would say actually that gets directly to David and the rest of the advisors in the marketplace. And while employers are in a position to provide a lot of great benefits, a lot of great tools, getting to an individual person's situation, especially as they approach a retirement, really needs to be addressed by a financial professional who can help that individual make the right decisions, come to the correct conclusion on how to be invested based on their time horizon, the money they've got, what they're trying to achieve. And a financial professional is the one who's in the best position to actually help those people do that and make sure that when they do go through times like this, and while the economic conditions of shutting down the economy are different, the market volatility is not unusual for people. Unexpected not unusual. And what we would do and what we partner, what I'll discuss later, is partnering with those financial advisors in order to make sure that not only employers get what they're looking for, but employees also have that opportunity as well.
Right.
David?
And Dave, what about you being that advisor that Bob's referring to?
You know, it's the segment of employees that has been the one of most concern is the 55 plus crowd. And although there were some painful lessons learned back in 2008, we still find that there's many plan participants over the age of 55 that have very heavy equity allocations, simply because interest rates have been so low for so long and people felt like the only return they could achieve was through the stock market. Then you enter, an unexpected crisis like this and the impact that it's had on equity markets, and people are quickly finding, wow, my balance has gone down quite a bit. So, one of the things we've been working closely with customers on is watching the data. And what I mean by that is the record keepers have the ability to tell us if people are moving to cash, if we're seeing any sweeping changes in portfolios on an individual perspective, to let us know if there's reason for immediate educational need and support. Because as all of you know, people moving to cash in markets like this just one time can be a tremendously detrimental impact on their long-term retirement outcome. So we're working with the record keepers to watch the data. We are reaching out to the participants via the plan sponsors at least once a week, giving them an update as far as what's going on with COVID, what's going on with the impact on the markets, what's the good news, what's the bad news, things to consider. And I think in times like these, it's very important to be factual, but to also keep it easy for people. People are being inundated with information, some of it good, some of it bad. I've noticed that there's been a proliferance of advertisements on the radio, telling people that, hey, you can access $100,000 from your retirement plan now. And people aren't realizing that these are employer by employer decisions of the CARE Act. So there's a lot of bad information out there. So we're trying to keep things simple, keep in front of the plan participants using technology, and really watch the data on the record keeping side to see if quick action is needed for plan participants.
Right. And I think you bring up a good point, and I think that's one of the purposes of today's call. If you take a look at the screen now, it's pretty well weighted towards the plan advisor, as you said, Bob, and I think as you've proven, Dave. But I think the other thing it shows is that we all have to work together. No one is able to do this on their own, and that's the purpose of the call today, is to show how the record keeper, the advisor, and the plan sponsor work together to get through this crisis. So I think that doesn't surprise me at all. And I would encourage you that if you have any questions, or your participants do, go to your plan advisor, because they're the first resort when it comes to issues like this, especially in the fluctuating market. Now, Bob, you bring a wealth of experience to the call today. As a matter of fact, I had the good experience with you for a short period of time. You've definitely shown to be a proven leader with more than 20 years of developing leading strategies across a variety of markets. Now, as head of workplace distributions, you are working with your team to become a leading provider of holistic solutions to your customers, and that's what they demand. I'm aware that a large part of your focus is to create a product awareness and enhance overall client satisfaction, so more Americans can secure their future and protect their families. Part of the way you make that happen is by working with retirement plan advisors, as you just mentioned, Bob, who are, I think, critical to this the entire process, as well as you and as well as Stephanie. So, Bob, would you give our listeners an idea of how record-keeping firms have historically worked with retirement plan advisors, and then provide some insight on how that may have changed since the advent of the crisis, and how that's going to be going forward?
Yeah, thanks, Tom. First, I want to thank Trow, Fred, Steph, Tom for having me on, and then Stephanie and any of the other first responders out there in the medical fields, or, like the people who come and get our garbage every day, and like Stephanie's organization who stock food, and then anybody who's delivering, anybody on the line who's doing that, we want to thank you for, keeping this going with everything going on. So, Tom, traditionally, our role is to work in partnership with those advisors to meet the needs of what that organization, a plan sponsor, and our human resource clients like Stephanie want to execute with regards to their offering for retirement or other voluntary benefits to meet the needs of whatever particular population they've got. There are two traditional service models that we try to support for advisors. The first one is where an advisor primarily or exclusively works with plan sponsors in order to meet those needs, whether it's vendor selection, vendor review, plan design, implementing changes, investment due diligence, providing investment fiduciary services, cost review for services, taking care of problem resolution, adding additional types of plan design. Stephanie alluded to some of that, and supporting whatever that advisor is looking to execute. And David touched on something that it really has become a very data technology driven business in order to analyze the data, provide that back to the advisor and the client, the plan sponsor and company, in order for them to make educated decisions on what they want to do around all of those major decisions that a plan sponsor would make or an employer would make. The second element of that, and some advisors participate in this or some don't, it's really what the company is looking for, is actually providing services directly to an employee base or the participants in the plan, whether it's enrollment, educating them, which was mentioned a little earlier, getting into specific financial issues, or in some cases, even providing advice. And the thing that had really come to fruition and got significant growth, and Stephanie's organization has done a phenomenal job in leading this, is getting into financial wellness or looking at a more holistic view of that participant or employee's entire financial situation. And Stephanie kind of hit it on the nose where she talked about like an 18, 19, 20-year-old doesn't really have the foresight to look, really the knowledge at this point to know what the implications of a decision today is 20, 30, 40, 50 years down the line. So how do you take what is going on today and translate that into what they're trying to do today, next week, next month, and then ultimately help them achieve their financial goals, including their retirement? So, our role as a record keeper is to provide the technology, make that work, provide the advisor the data and the information that they need in order for them to help make the best decisions for their client today and tomorrow. So what's going on today, I would bucket into a couple different situations. And I would just say, depending on where you are in the country, there are very different answers to these questions. First, if you're an essential business or a non-essential business, you probably have very different things going on. So, is Stephanie taking the time to do this? As she said, her organization is extremely busy. The hospitals that we currently service, the doctor's offices that we currently service are not even having these discussions. They are inundated and just trying to keep their people safe, trying to keep people staffed, trying to get the resources that they need, and people actually in human resources are being dedicated, redirected into like making the business run because they have such demand on their business. You've got other essential businesses that are learning to work very differently. People who do the accounting on our books, our industries in the financial services, in order to help facilitate loans and hardships and make sure that people can get access to the resources that they've put away for a rainy day or retirement. And then you've got non-essential businesses that need a completely different set of things from their financial advisors, restaurants, bars, entertainment venues that have completely shut down. So the first one, and what has been going on, is decisions around the CARE Act. And as David said, that is a plan by plan decision based on what that employer needs, what is going on. And that really is where they're getting a lot of help from their financial advisors. And we try to support that as much as we can so that they understand what those decisions are, what the implications of those decisions are on their plan, what might trigger an event that fully vests their employees, what's the difference between a furloughed or a laid off employee. what can be done today that you can do immediately without amending your document, everything within that context. And then you get into specific financial issues that an advisor could bring to the table that we try to help them with the reduction in the assets in their plan. Specifically what David was saying, the data on where assets are going. Did a large amount of their population move from equities into some type of cash-based business? What should we do with that? Setting up assistance with video conferencing, if that's necessary, getting people established so that they can do some of the things day to day that might need to be done. So some of the things that are going on in different areas in very large extremes. I'll give you an example. In New York and New Jersey, there was a large group of advisors that we're working with that have actually put almost all their financial considerations, and every single day they go deliver food with other advisors and some of our staff to people who can't leave their homes because they are infected. They can't get their supplies. So the biggest need to fill hasn't actually been a financial need. It's actually supporting their clients in a completely different way in order to make sure that their employees and their staff and their clients are taken care of purely from a humanistic standpoint, because that is the need in some of the areas of the country. In other areas of the country, there are people who just said, like, hey, I can continue doing my business. We are not having the infection rates, but we are working in a completely different manner. I need help on how to make virtual meetings successful. We've never done that before. How do you actually get 30 people on a meeting and not have everybody distracted and doing something else while I need their attention? How do you keep them doing that? So you've got other organizations out there who are taking this downtime to completely review things that have all been put to the side, reviewing administrative things that they wanted to do but hadn't had a chance to do previously, and relying on their financial advisor to give them advice on adding voluntary benefits, reviewing their plan, doing training with their staff, setting up some new things that they want to do. Specific to what's going on with participants, employees, David addressed it in a couple, is really addressing concerns in that triage of what do people need most. So for people who are in desperate financial needs, assessing, do I take a loan? You don't need to take the entire amount. Should I take a hardship withdrawal? You don't need to take the entire amount. Maybe you just need to take some portion of that. Being able to take care of addressing market volatility and making those investment changes. Is it appropriate? Not appropriate? If you did make that change, what can you do in order to get back into the market if that's appropriate? So everything around that education specific to what is going on, whether you're in an essential business that's actually overwhelmed with the amount of work they've got, all the way to the extreme where we've got people who are out of a job, need to get access to assets in order to pay their rent, get food. And then the last thing is with regards to, some of the planning that people have started to do with what is a new normal going to look like, and really taking a comprehensive look at financial wellness. So there was a statistic before all of this started, which I think is going to be highlighted significantly. It was about 70% of the population didn't even have $400 saved for an emergency. And we couldn't possibly come up with a bigger emergency than what we've got right now. And I just, I feel compelled to try to find a way to help those people. I think all of us do. That's why we're in this business, to make sure that they can get through this. And if you don't have emergency savings, maybe your retirement plan isn't the first thing you should be doing. So what do we do to take a look at a comprehensive look at that individual, give advisors and those plan sponsors the resources to make appropriate decisions so that we can help people become holistically financially healthy, not just save for their retirement plan? Because one thing we've learned over the last 30 plus years is if you're just telling everybody, you can't tell a 19, 20-year-old, even a 25, 30, 35-year-old in some cases, hey, plan for 65 or 70 when they're trying to pay their rent, safer kids' colleges, buy their first car, get into a home. You have to take all of that into place, and we need to take that approach in order to make sure that people can make it through not only times like this, but have a successful, and providing David and other advisors like him with that high-tech, high-touch, data-orientated structure in order to give them the tools that they need to assist their clients.
That's great, Bob. Very insightful. And I think, one of the things you mentioned is if the employee does have other resources to turn to first, such as an emergency fund, and I know you do a lot of that, helping clients do that. You also have student loan programs, HSAs, and things of that nature. So I would imagine, I think it would be very important for people to remember, if you're going to have a problem like we're going through right now, look at those other resources first before you tap into your retirement plan, because of course that's going to really erode your retirement plan balance down the end when you're really going to need that for retirement. So thank you very much, Bob. As I said, very insightful. Now let's put up our next poll question. You see here, how often is your plan advisor communicating with your retirement committee? So we're going to take time for you to take a look at that. In the meantime, Steph, do we have any questions from the audience?
Yes, we do.
Every time you say Steph, I think you're saying me.
I know. No, we'll call you Stephanie.
Question that we have.
Go ahead, Steph.
A question that we do have from the attendees is, are we as plan sponsors obligated to share the notice that participants can get a distribution from their plan due to COVID-19?
Would you like to take that, Dave?
Sure. And the interesting thing about the CARE Act is some record keepers have an opt-in and some record keepers have an opt-out.
Right.
So some employers are defaulting into adopting all of these different various plan provisions unless they sign something saying they can't do it. So I think that's fascinating. Whereas other record keepers are taking the approach that they want folks to opt in. So it makes them think through each provision to see if they want to add it. And if those provisions are added, notice to plan participants should be provided. But I caution our clients and employers, because one of the things that we really want people to think about is this is a last, a real last ditch place to get money. So we don't want to encourage people to use these provisions if they don't absolutely need the money. And to Bob's point earlier, being able to encourage them to go to other sources before using any of these provisions is important. And one thing that we did is we came up with a little infographic, just a little one-page, very simple path to cash, we call it. And it shows people, if you're under financial duress during this very unique time, these are the ways you should access money to take care of your immediate financial need. And it shows, from the very top, emergency savings, and then it goes all the way down, kind of an upside down triangle is what it looks like. And the last two are taking a loan from your 401k and taking a distribution from your 401k. So, I think it's important that employers provide adequate notice to plan participants inside qualified plans. However, I think how that's communicated is of critical importance. And we had one client this week that wanted to put in these provisions because they knew they were going to have a number of employees that were affected, but they wanted to also put in a speed bump. And what that speed bump is the employee has to contact myself or my team and talk about the situation before the distribution forms are able to be provided to that particular participant. And I thought that was kind of a unique stopgap measure to take by an employer that really wants to protect the outcomes for people, but also understands the dire need of the situation and that people very well may need to access money. But we want to limit this as best we can, because taking a loan when the market is where it's at right now is a bad idea. Taking a distribution is a worse idea because they're locking in low values and there's tax implications, et cetera, et cetera. So we certainly don't want to encourage these distributions.
Very well said, David. I couldn't agree with you more. I think all the people on this call, make sure that you first of all, check with your provider to see if there is an opt-out or an opt-in and understand the consequences of that. And I think that's a great idea, Dave, about putting that speed bump in there, that before any of your participants take advantage of these opportunities under the CARES Act, make sure they talk to a trained advisor like David, who can walk them through the process and show both the pros and the cons. So I think that was very well said, David. So let's go to our next poll, the answer to our last poll question. Okay, and this doesn't surprise me. I think this is something that I see all the time as I'm traveling around the country. Well, now traveling around the virtual world, that this is a good thing for advisors to be focusing on, keeping in contact. And every call we've done up to this point, one of the constant things we've seen is advisors are keeping in constant contact with their plan sponsors and making sure they understand what's going on with the CARES Act and all the other consequences thereof. And I also think what Bob was mentioning, keep in contact with those plan sponsors by doing nice things like that, Bob, and I commend you for doing that. I think that's a great idea. So speaking of you, Dave, we just some great insight from you, but you are a retirement plan advisor with a tremendous amount of expertise. Your firm manages over $1.1 billion in retirement plan assets, and you work with private organizations, municipalities, and tax-exempt organizations. You provide plan fiduciary, plan sponsor, and participant services to over 100 plans. Your team was named the 2019 Retirement Plan Advisor of the Year by Plan Sponsor Magazine. Congratulations on that. And your firm also was named one of the top advisory firms nationally over the last 3 years by Financial Times. So again, congratulations on that as well, David. You know, looking at what we're going through right now, David, what are some of the differences in how you used to deliver your services to your plan sponsors and how you find yourself delivering them today?
You know, the market has changed quite a bit over just the past 3 or 5 years. And when I say the market has changed, I don't mean the stock market. I just mean the advisory market as a whole. We've seen the evolution of much more specialized type firms like us that focus on defined contribution, whereas a large part of our market used to be controlled by wealth managers that might have a plan or two or three, you know, for their clients that happen to own a business. So, you know, we've really changed from, you know, as an industry of being hobbyists to specialized firms that have, you know, staffs that are in place to support plan sponsors from a compliance standpoint, an investment governance standpoint, an overall plan administration standpoint. And then also provide a suite of services for plan participants that's outside of just, you know, here's how an investment works and here's how to put together a portfolio and good luck. You know, we're doing custom education programs for our customers, utilizing technology and also utilizing in-person meetings, and custom making wellness programs for customers to help their employees better understand finance in general. And, you know, one of the things last year that we were working on was overall financial wellness, of the importance of emergency savings, you know, how revolving credit works, how to avoid credit card traps, you know, lots of basic information that unfortunately is not provided in our high schools and colleges these days at a very high level, but we feel is critically important. And, you know, at the end of this really long bull market that we've had that has just, you know, come crashing down, there's so many plan participants out there that, you know, felt that a target date fund has some type of guarantee or they couldn't lose money inside a target date fund. And, you know, now we have a whole lot of people that are seeing a negative return for the first time in their careers. And people have questions, people are concerned. And we think that this market is an opportunity for specialist advisors to gain more market share, because plan sponsors are going to be demanding this type of service, because I think it's critically important for both the plan sponsor client and, at the end of the day, the plan participant, because there's a lot of things that go into a successful outcome, and the 401k contribution investment is just a small piece of it.
Thank you. And how often do you communicate with your retirement committee, David, yourself?
You know, we have customers where I sit on these committees, and we have customers where I see them every 90 days. I think that's actually a little too frequent. We're moving to more of a every 6 months to have a live committee meeting, and then on the off quarters, we're providing a detailed report and any action items that are needed. So we recommend at least every 6 months, but depending upon the customer, we might have some that are every 90 days. You know, we reach out with some information to the plan participants and the plan sponsors at least every quarter. And through the market correction that's taken place recently, we've been issuing a weekly letter for distribution to all plan participants to let them know what's going on and how to access us with questions.
That's great. And during this period of time, what are you doing with the committee in terms of material and information? Are you keeping them up to information about things that are happening in the industry and how those things could affect them as an employer and their participants?
You know, we keep them abreast of course, of everything going on in the market, but we also advise committees as far as what's going on from a legislation perspective and an industry perspective as well. You know, our industry has seen a lot of consolidation. There's been a lot of M&A activity, both on the advisory side and the record keeping side over the course of the past 10 years. And we think this is going to continue. The current market environment, I think, could actually accelerate some of this type activity on the record keeping side and on the advisory side. So I think it's something that's important for us to stay in front of customers to let them know what's going on, because these type things can affect their plans at any point. So, you know, there's always rumors in the marketplace, but as soon as we know something's got some truth to it, we let our customers know that. And if they're with a record keeper that might be going through a change, we're certainly going to keep them abreast of anything that we hear in the marketplace.
That's great. You know, what are the benefits for the retirement plan committee working closely with an advisor like yourself, David? What do you feel the benefits are?
You know, I think it's peace of mind first and foremost. I think it's liability reduction because, when plan committee members learn that they've got some personal liability in the game, they certainly want to make sure they're partnered with a fiduciary advisor. So, we do things like manage the file for the client, maintain a fiduciary vault, maintain minutes for all the meetings, to make sure that if they have an audit, whether governmental or independent, they're ready to go at a moment's notice. So I think that creating that peace of mind for plan sponsors is one of the most important things that we do. And in the event they have an audit, they're ready to go and we're ready to jump in and assist.
That's great. Well, thank you very much, David. So let's put up our last poll question, if you would, DJ. How often is your plan advisor communicating with your plan participants? We asked first about your retirement committee, but what about the plan participants? We'll take just a second for that. And Steph, we don't have time for a lot of questions, but we have one right now while we're tallying the results of the poll.
Thanks, Tom. Question we have is rather specific. If we furlough less than 30% of our employees, how does that impact our 401k plan?
Okay, Stephanie, would you like to take that?
I'm not sure. I mean, how that's, if you furlough less than 30%, how is that going to affect your 401k plan?
That's correct.
If it's going to impact it, sorry guys, I'm thinking, I'm trying to think, how would that impact me?
Well,
I'm more thinking of other things that would impact, sure. As you guys talked about. It's more on a company. When you start furloughing, you're going to be impacting, obviously, the funds that are going into your 401k. Having that, if people are furloughing and then because they're then taking that money out, that's going to be the financial impact to the plan. The other piece of this puzzle that we haven't really talked about, and I don't want to take up too much time, but food for thought for everyone is, and especially in my situation, there are regional specific things that have occurred. Like, for instance, California, we're across the United States, but California specifically, I'm dealing with it, there is, in addition to the CARES Act, basically a bridge. So if you have more than 500 team members, you now have to give PTO time, so sick time, for certain instances. So now that is a financial hit, and also the potential of trying to have people take time off and use unemployment. I mean, there's all of these caveats. You also have the impact on your workman's comp side, as well as not only the workman's comp and having people have access to that, but on your healthcare side. What about your team members that are sick that don't have access to healthcare initially, or now they're trying to figure out ways to pay for those bills if they're not working, et cetera? So all of that plays into your retirement because it's going to play into the financial health of your organization. So as you're making these decisions, my biggest thing is look at that big picture and the holistic. Does it make sense for you to furlough these people? If it does, what's going to be the impact to everything else that also, just as a byproduct, is going to impact your 401k account as an employer and for the employees?
That's great. Well, thank you, Stephanie. Let's take a look at our results to our last poll question. And as you see, they communicate at least monthly. And again, I think that's a good barometer to go by. And I think what both these polls show when talking to you and talking to your participants is critical that all three of us work together. We being the plan sponsor, the record keeper, and the advisor, and understand what the uniqueness is of each one of those and how you can work together to get through this crisis and come out the other end in very good shape. So I want to thank all of the panelists for today's participation. I want to thank Stephanie, Bob, and David. We appreciate your participation and great insight in today's call. Now, also, I'd like to thank all the people from TPSU. And keep in mind, there'll actually be a replay of this on 401k TV on this coming Monday. So if you want to suggest this to any of your friends, any of your colleagues, participants, it will be available on Monday. Okay, so now, as I said, I want to thank the panelists, and this wraps up today's information. And now we're going to go to the SHRM credits for any of you who would like to stay on the line for just a brief moment after the call. Thank you very much for participating today, ladies and gentlemen. We look forward to talking to you on an upcoming call, which will be Friday of next week.